Hey guys, welcome to the channel. You're taking a look at the MiG-21 F-13. This plane is an absolute legend in real life and in game as well. And in real life because, well, it was one of the most fascinating jets shrouded in mystery in the early Cold War. And in this game because not a lot of people played, and it's such a pleasant surprise when you're flying this plane and you see another player who's also flying this plane. You're like, oh my god, this is so cool. You get into a formation flight with him, and then you guys just circling around the battlefield going Mach, and then the next thing you know is your friendly is shot out of the sky. So I hope that with this video I can help those players that decide to pick up this plane and do better in it. So, but first we're going to introduce this plane. The MiG-21 F-13 was introduced in late 50s and early 60s. It replaced the MiG-21 F model and the MiG-21P model, and the F model means Forcerovani, okay? And the Forcerovani translated into English means forced or uprated or boosted. So the MiG-21F replaced the MiG-21P with a much better engine, which helps this plane propel itself to over Mach 2 at high altitude. And the 13 in its name indicates the missile system that it uses. One might argue that in game, when you check the labels on the missile systems, it says R3S. The R3S is basically a missile called the K-13A, which is from the Wimpel family of missiles. It was copied from the AIM-9B Sidewinder, which was, I think probably almost a lot of you know about that story, how MiG-15 got lodged with an AIM-9B in its fuselage, and it flew back to China, and the Russians got a hold of it from the Chinese and then reverse engineered it, and we get the R3S. Now, the Russians did put a better warhead into it, which has higher explosive mass, and also they gave it a much faster speed than the regular AIM-9B. So if you're flying pretty fast, the missile is going to really become more effective at higher speeds. The next thing about this plane is that the engine that it has is called the Biznatski R11 F300, and it outputs 5,324 kilogram force of thrust, which means that at 10 minutes of fuel you have 0.91 thrust to weight ratio, which is pretty damn good. But at higher fuel loads, like right now, I have 18 minutes of fuel with me, so I have close to around 0.80 thrust to weight ratio, which is quite respectable to say the least at this tier, as it can allow you to accelerate pretty quickly in a dive or in a straight line. But there are some planes that can outmatch your acceleration, like the MiG-19s or the A5s. Now, I would like to mention that we just had a dogfight with the MiG-19 and the A5 both at the same time, and we still managed to perform better than it. And the way we used the plane was that we used its strengths against the weaknesses that are inherent to the MiG-19 form factor of the plane. The MiG-19s, although they have really... Wow, I love this shot, by the way. So, the MiG-19s and the A5s do have a pretty good thrust-to-weight ratio. They have amazing energy retention, but they have a problem with compressibility at higher speeds, which the MiG-21 does not. It performs amazing at higher speeds, and that's thanks to the kind of airframe that it has and the kind of the wing structure it has, which gives it that roll rate and turning ability at higher speeds, and it can pull a lot of G's, like up to 12 G's at such higher speeds, and even 13 G's for just 1 second. Now, don't test that because you might break the plane at really high speeds doing a snap roll. The thing is to not snap roll with this plane. Now this is again another dogfight that I'm having with the Lightning F6, and Lightning F6 and the MiG-21 are pretty evenly matched. But here, what we are doing is we are using the strengths of the MiG-21 against the weaknesses of the Lightning F6. And what the Lightning F6 pilot is doing is he is taking all the advantages of his plane and throwing them down the gutter. Basically, he could have accelerated away from us and extended, but he chose to stick to the dogfight. Now, I don't know whether that is because of the ego of that pilot or whatever, but I personally think that it is the lack of knowledge in understanding how their plane works in the best manner possible against the MiG-21 and not having enough knowledge about the strengths of their plane. So what we did was we reversed it and we shot it out of the sky because we accelerate slower than the Lightning F6, and the Lightning F6 bleeds just as much speed than us, and which put us behind the Lightning F6. And right here what we're doing is we took off from the airfield. We accelerated the plane up to 900 kilometers an hour, 1,000 kilometers an hour, and then we put it into a zoom climb. We climb up, we go around the battlefield to circle around and try to engage those players that are high and they are unaware of our presence, because we're so fast, so quick, that before they even get to the middle of the battlefield, we are on their six. So we engaged them with missiles and guns before they could do anything about that. And this is exactly what the MiG-21 F-13 excels at. It is surprise ambushes. You go fast, you go in there, you spread destruction, and then you get the hell out of that place as soon as you can, because these early non-supersonic jets of the Cold War are really good at dogfighting and retaining energy. So if you get into a dogfight that is not using boom and zoom, and you get into a turn fight with these guys, they are going to mess you up. So the tactics to use against early jets is, especially the non-supersonic ones, is to boom and zoom and get away from them as soon as possible. Or if you can, then you can first, like a barracuda, zoom in and out while engaging a plane. And if you don't manage to land your shots, you first deplete them of their energy, and then when you realize that they're depleted of their energy, you can stick behind them because you bleed a lot of energy and they cannot accelerate that quickly. So what you manage to do is you can stay behind them and either missile them, because at a lower energy state they cannot evade the missile, or gun them down, whichever is more feasible at that particular time. Now, one interesting thing about this plane is that it's got a lot of nicknames. Now, in Russia, it was called the balalaika because of the musical instrument in Russia, which is shaped just like MiG-21. And in Vietnam, it was called Enbak, which is Silver Swallow, which is pretty much my most favorite nickname that it's got. And the worst nickname that it has is the one that the NATO countries gave it, and that is the fish bed. Now, I don't know why it was called the fish bed. The Russians didn't like it either. They preferred to call it the balalaika. I mean, that's a pretty graceful name, and the Silver Swallow, again, another pretty graceful name. And this plane surely deserves a really graceful name. So, fish bed, although it's now stuck to this plane, I really don't like that call sign for this, especially that NATO call sign. Anyway, so now we are having a dogfight with the Harrier, and that too with half an elevator. And although I was like, I should go back to the airfield and repair, but when I was accelerating away from them, I realized that one of the Harriers stuck behind me. And I thought that it might be a bit of a challenge to use this plane with just one elevator, and I was beginning to doubt that I would be able to do good in it, but like right here, right now, I was just like, oh my god, I'm dead. But then I was like, no, just stick in there. Just pulled because this plane could pull really good AOA. Even at lower speeds with just half an elevator, you saw that the AOA that I pulled, and I got away from it and evaded that shot and managed to reverse him and blow his tail off, and that was it. And that was a lot of fun. Now, this kind of challenges that you really live for when you playing this game, and they're one of the most pleasurable moments in this game. Alright, moving away from the peculiar nicknames of this plane and also this very peculiar dogfight that we're having with this Harrier, let's move on to talking about the airframe limitations of this plane. This plane has a maximum wing grip limit of 1,260 kilometers an hour. Now, you can squeeze a few more kilometers from it, but I don't trust it. Sometimes it rips at 1,260, sometimes a little bit more than that, but it will rip at that speed. Now, keep in mind that the lower you are, the more prone you are to the wing rips, and the higher you are, the less prone you are to wing rips. So when you will be diving from a higher altitude to a lower altitude doing your boom and zoom runs, you have to be careful to either switch off your burner or pop the air brakes. So it has to become a reflex for you so that you don't reduce your speed too much, but also not cross that 1,260 kilometers an hour threshold at lower altitudes. The wing grip used to be around 1,300 kilometers an hour, but I don't know whether it was historical inaccuracy or they did it as a balancing measure because it is at a lower BR, and at this BR not a lot of things can go 1,300 kilometers an hour, so they probably added that feature. Now, coming over to the flaps, the takeoff flaps break off at 524 kilometers an hour and the landing flaps at 450. You can make use of the takeoff flaps quite effectively, and also landing flaps to guide your plane a little better in very low speed turn fights, because sometimes you might be able to generate that lift, but you cannot sustain it. And the flaps help you a little bit just to squeeze that a bit of angle to get that right shot off. And a disclaimer, I am not at all sorry for shooting down this P-51. When he joined this battle rating with his friends, he knew exactly what he was in for. Anyway, so another problem that you might be faced with while flying this plane is how to deal with subsonics. And especially when you are alone or you have less team members on your team left against more of theirs. So they can easily keep a track of you, and when you are coming in for a gun run or a missile launch, they will evade. Granted, the MiG-21 is agile enough to pull into their turns and shoot them down, but sometimes it would be a problem because when you do use that agility of the MiG-21, you might end up losing a lot of energy. You're going to notice that you might be traveling at 1,000 kilometers an hour at one instance, and the moment you use that turn of the MiG-21, you will be left with no energy, probably even less than 700 kilometers an hour. And the planes that will be tailing you while you are engaging that other player would probably retain that energy in those turns better than you and get a shot off on you. So you have to first separate the enemy forces either by using your boom and zoom runs or laying ambushes for the enemy forces. Now, this match is one of the best showcases that displays the lethality of the MiG-21 F-13, granted all the stars aligned. We first engaged the J-35A, who was slow with a missile, and then we came in for an attack run on the A-32, took him out. That was 2 kills. And we see another F-11 who is running around from the furball away to get his energy back and come back for a zoom. and we engaged him, taking him out with our higher energy state. And then we see a J-29F who is turning around to engage another one of our friendly team members, and we engage him and take him out, and that's 4 enemy players down in a very, very quick succession, and all that in just 1 minute and 15 seconds. Now, we had to go back to the base in RTB, and we were left with just 2 enemy players, and here I'm using the MiG-21 in its perfect habitat as an ambusher. Now, the enemy players are going to take off from their airfield, and I'm going to hide in the clouds, and I'm going to use a blind hunt to get one of them spotted and then ambush him. It is these kinds of moments that you want to play your MiG-21 F-13 to feel like an absolute god in this shit. You become absolutely untouchable, and if you play your plane right, you can squeeze out a lot of fun from this plane. I had a lot of fun flying this plane now, and I would like to make a disclaimer, and by no means do I have a great KD in this thing. I have a horrible KD with this plane, but the reason why I fly it and why I enjoy playing this plane is that this plane is a niche plane, and the plane demands from the player to learn all the nuances that this plane has to offer and use the strengths and its weaknesses to play this plane and develop different strategies and tactics in situations where you can carry your team to victory, or just use this thing as a high-speed fun machine, because this thing as an interceptor is really good at catching unsuspecting enemies off guard. And even then, the most interesting thing about flying this plane is that it offers the most raw flying experience of all the MiG-21s. And the same skills that you can learn flying this MiG-21 can be applied to the J-7 as well in the Chinese tech tree. And here we are with our 5th kill, and now almost with our 6th kill, as we're going to escape this cloud in front of us and lob a missile at this Skyhawk. Inverted. Let's go. There we go. Come on. Yeah. But we got lucky that the G91 died late due to the fire, because that could have alerted the A4 that someone was behind him. And eventually we got that victory. Anyway, I hope you guys had a good time, because I most certainly did. And see you guys later.